Dawn of War 4. A game that I am at once very excited for and simultaneously scared to death for, as the spectre of Dawn of War 3 certainly looms rather heavily over any continuation of the franchise. And the fact that this is also being shifted out of Relic's hands and into that of a new company, well, could both mean really good things and really bad things. But nevertheless, I want to talk about it. I want to cover it, because if Dawn of War 4 is good, well, that'll be a pretty damn huge deal, honestly. And after Dawn of War 1 came out, and I was frankly stunned by how much fun I was having playing it, God, I really want this to be good. And we recently had some brand new footage and an interview coming out of the Tokyo Game Show, so I figured, why not a good old-fashioned little reaction video on it, eh? Like we used to cover Total War content back in the day before that got derpy. Anyways, let's have a look, shall we? Primaris. God, I hate Primaris. But again, it's something GW has forced on them. I also do like this slightly more muted color palette now, but I feel like we're kind of trapped in this kind of space where either the color palette becomes kind of blown out brownish like this, or overly colorful, a la Dawn of War 3. It's kind of a weird situation where there's very little of, well, winning on either side of it. Oh, those icons. Okay, so the icons aside, which feel very much so kind of Slytherin-esque strategy game, also a little Dawn of War 3-ish, I do like the look of the map. I do like the fact that you've got squadrons of units here, and I do like how many units you have as well. That's rather interesting. Although, again, the map's like my biggest concern at the moment, because the maps do look genuinely tiny.
Capturing power source.
Base building with turrets, happy to see it. Also, you can kind of like tell that they've gone back to the old games as well, like the command center back there, for example, with the radar dish. Straight out of Dawn of War 2, which I quite like.
Orcs attack! Kill them all! Here we go! Tech Priest leader sighted. In the Omnissiah's name!
Oh, and the new focus on matched animations too and melee. That is a lovely touch that I do like a lot.
Unleash the fury of the machines! Purge them to the last!
The firing from cover thing still looks a little bit weird. It kind of looks like they've just locked into the cover, right? Rather than there being dynamic cover. Because, of course, in previous entries in Dawn of War and Company of Heroes, you would just have cover terrain around that was like green, yellow, or red for negative cover, like an open roadway, for example. Whereas here, it seems more like cover is more like fixed positions, almost, on the battlefield, which again brings back unwelcome comparisons with the bubble cover from Dawn of War 3.
Engaging. We shall know no fear. All shall die. Withdraw.
Fall back.
Do not submit to defeat. Fight to the last.
I really do like the scale, though. Like, that is the thing I like the most at the moment. Like, these battles look big, and I'm all here for it. A little worried about the big guy in the background, because that was also a Dawn of War 3 problem, where at the end of the day, the only unit you'd ever build was the big guy, because he'd destroy literally everything else, but Stompers.
For the Emperor!
I mean, that does look good, doesn't it? I mean, that does look good. There's niggling things here and there, little design decisions, etc. But overall, as far as the trailer is concerned, that does look solid. And on the one hand, I'm still getting those little same alarm bells I got from Dawn of War 3, but I'm really enamored with the scale of it all. King Art, I was going to say German developer, I think. Bremen, Germany, yes. Previous developers of Iron Harvest, which was in essence an attempt to kind of sort of create a company of hero-style game with mechs, which they succeeded with the mechs, failed with the infantry, which is why I think they're not a bad choice for this, necessarily. But they did also demonstrate with Iron Harvest that they were a little bit too young, a little bit too inexperienced to truly manage to capture the vision and the excellence of games like that. Hopefully, they have aged well.
I mean, the first big decision, of course, was what are we aiming for, right? Do we try to do a Dawn of War 1 or Dawn of War 2 or a mix of the both? Because, you know, we like both of them, but in the end we said no, let's really go with Dawn of War 1. That's our guiding star.
Which I understand. Dawn of War 2, it was personally my favorite, because it was far more of a straight-up competitive strategy game, focused primarily on micro, which meant that you had a very high skill ceiling, which was good in that I enjoyed it, but it also meant that it chased away every newbie ever, as they'd load up in their first match, have fun, then 2 or 3 matches later they'd run into somebody who knew what they were doing, and they'd be absolutely brutally cream pied again and again and again, simply because, well, the focus was on micro and controlling individual units well, which is a skill you learn over time rather than something you can just kind of snap adapt to. Whereas Dawn of War 1 being a bit more macro-focused again, while still having a solid focus on micro, was a more middle-of-the-road approach. And also the one that was the most popular with the majority of people, I do admit.
There were 3 major things that we were looking to preserve building Dawn of War 4. First off, we wanted to double down and push forward on sync kills. So not only just having synchronized animations between units killing each other, but also synchronized melee combat through our combat director system.
Absolutely the correct choice too, by the way. This is what everyone remembers about the Dawn of War games, the sync kills, the compilations of sync kills, and expanding that out to also like the melee combat at large, although it might be difficult, is an excellent idea. Now it does introduce some balance challenges with, okay, what do you do if a unit is in the middle of a sync kill? Do you allow it to continue to be damaged by units around it, thereby locking it in and quite likely reducing its DPS significantly, or do you make it immune to damage? Now, personally, I would simply say yes, make it immune to damage, but make the units shooting at it attempt to switch target to the nearest closest target, so that they don't waste their own DPS. Now, that too has problems with melee units, but it's at least a marginally better solution, and this is actually a difficult one.
We talked to a lot of people, you know, what do you remember from Dawn of War 1, or what, you know, made Dawn of War 1 for you? And everybody was excited about sync kills, right? Because that was just something that everybody remembered. And so we said, okay, we definitely want sync kills in the game, but could we maybe even make it, you know, more spectacular, or something that, you know, 20 years later is super cool. And so we came up with a new system.
And yeah, that's an excellent start right there. Sync kills. Everybody remembers it because it was also the first game that really did it on that scope and scale and intricacy as well.
I think when you do like a new version or reinterpretation of a classic game, the challenge is always that you're not trying to recreate the old game, but you try to recreate the feeling that people had when they played the old game, right? So what you...
Honestly, I'd be happy if you just recreated the old games at this point, but fair enough.
Basically want to do is you look at the old game, you ask yourself, okay, how did this work and how did this make us feel and how can we do this 20 years later?
We also wanted to bring back base building as well as large-scale armies and engagements.
There's
And I'm entirely on board with that too. Now, the one very worry is that if you get too much large scale, you end up in a Dawn of War 3 situation where Dawn of War 3 actually had a pretty good early game that felt fairly good, but the moment you began hitting like the vehicle middle of the game stages, basically both parties, assuming neither one had been completely routed from the field and had all of their resources taken away, would simply start spamming an endless number of vehicles, because the vehicles were the most impactful units, and since your armies were so large, you just needed to get as many of your best units out on the field as possible. And since most infantry units couldn't really fight armor, they became largely worthless. Until the end of the game, all you had on the field were hero units, because they were the most effective pound for pound, and tanks. And the only infantry were maybe some devastators with anti-tank weaponry. So I'm a pinch worried about that, but that's more of an economic balance concern, you know?
so many cool factions and so many cool stories you could choose from, and we basically ended up picking the factions we picked.
You know, I was sent a message about this interview. I was like, oh, cool, they did an interview at Tokyo. I got to check it out. Oh, yeah, it looks like Dawn of War 3. And I'm like, I'm not 100% sure about that. Like, there's a giant pride flag in the background. It's like, ha, 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 ha. There's no way that's actually true. I should have known better. Now, again, that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it certainly makes it very clear why I, despite having helped quite a bit with Iron Harvest, I was in direct contact with King Art for the longest time, trying to help them out, trying to give them some constructive feedback and criticism, attempting to show off their game to my best abilities, etc., was surprisingly enough left out of their early access thing when they gave it out to a bunch of other streamers. At first I figured, okay, that's definitely Games Workshop, because as we know, I'm officially blacklisted by them. Beginning to wonder if there might be other things as well. And the problem is too, like, so I don't want to get too stuck on this because I don't want to judge them just because of their apparent ideology, which seems quite clear here, but one of the issues with Iron Harvest was that it felt somewhat amateurish. It felt like it was made by a team who was, like I mentioned previously, like about 75% of the way there. They had the general idea, but they didn't quite have the know-it-all to really get the last bit in, right? That's why the infantry combat felt really stiff, whilst the mechs felt really good. Another explanation for that is, of course, that they're just not very good at what they do. And that is something that is frighteningly often connected directly to people being hired for ideological reasons rather than their actual ability to complete their jobs. So, with that having been proven as a factor dozens of times already, it is worth pointing out.
Because we felt if we do like a new version or like a...
Another little flag down there too. Right, so this is definitely the office policy then.
Evolution of Dawn of War 1, you need the Blood Ravens and you need the Orcs, that is just a given.
Black Ravens?
Of Dawn of War 1, you need the Blood Ravens and you need the Orcs.
That could just be a very heavy German accent, but I'm reasonably sure that the Blood Ravens were the main characters in the Dawn of War series. Nitpicky.
That is just a given.
We worked closely together.
That is exactly the Stomper from Dawn of War 3 too, though.
Together with Games Workshop to make sure that we got the feel and the look of all factions right. We knew right from the jump that we wanted to make a game that felt true to the universe and to the factions.
We thought about...
And of course you've got to say that, but also I kind of disagree right off the bat. Because, of course, if you work directly with Games Workshop these days, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be creating a setting that feels anything like 40k. Indeed, the inclusion of seemingly nothing but Primaris Marines would kind of seem like it kind of preempts that in a way, because you're dealing with the Blood Ravens, of course, basically 1,000 Suns successor chapter. The idea that therefore good old Warp Squirrel Quall would have an entire replacement force of Primaris Marines ready for them, you know, that opens up a lot of complicated lore questions as to how much 1,000 Suns gene seed is Cole currently sitting on.
Adding the Necrons, because we felt that, you know, Necrons were kind of promised for Dawn of War 3 and never came, so...
Why would you say that? If anything, I would think that would be a good reason to distance yourself from them, but... I'm getting too hung up on the Dawn of War 3 thing.
It felt like a nice touch to finally give them to the players. There may be a faction that, you know, never had a big role in the Dawn of War game.
What? No, I'm pretty sure the Necros had a fairly large role in Dark Crusade. Slowly but surely, I'm getting more and more nervous. The longer the interview goes on, the more skeptical I become. Because now I'm pretty sure the Necron... And again, you based it on Dawn of War 1.
And there are not that many. Adeptus Mechanicus.
No, there's fuck tons of them. What are you on? I'm nitpicking. I shouldn't, but... The Necrons, if you're talking pure population, they're actually one of the most populous fucking factions in the galaxy. It's just the majority of them are asleep. But when they wake up on a tomb world, oh, you better bet there's a fucking lot of them. That's why they're so unbelievably dangerous, and why in Dawn of War 1, the only way they could defeat the Necrons wasn't by actually beating them strategically or militarily, but by collapsing the tomb itself to bury them, as any traditional conventional military conflict against the Necrons on a tomb world is literally pointless.
Definitely like a big and important faction in the 40k universe, and they were never part of the Dawn of War, and so we felt that's a good opportunity to have something new for everyone. They were never part of the Dawn of War, and so a big and important faction in the 40k universe, and they were never part of the Dawn of War, and so we felt that...
Okay, alright. So this is one of the things that kind of annoy me a little bit, and with these games occasionally, right? Same happened with Dawn of War 3. You've got a guy who's sitting in front of like an assload of 40k miniatures, got a lot of them behind him, got a lot in front, basically to hammer home the street cred, right? And I get it, I absolutely do. I'm sitting in front of a giant bookcase filled with 40k books and other things, even though it's covered by a banner, etc. But you really should read up on the lore you're going to talk about if you're going to be making statements, because no, the Necrons have been part of a Dawn of War game. They're part of the Dawn of War game you cite as your primary inspiration for this game. Again,
that's a good opportunity to have something new for everyone.
A couple of things that we knew we wanted to bring back were things such as unit upgrades and so on, such as assault intercessors that you just saw with jump packs, as well.
Also, bringing back, well, I mean, yes, the jump units, I guess, but it's... Also, no, I like this guy better, because upgrades, unit upgrades, absolutely. They were one of the best parts of Dawn of War 2, mind you. Dawn of War 1, I mean, they were a big part of Dawn of War 1 as well, but honestly, I kind of feel like they were more of a part of Dawn of War 2, really. Particularly for the Space Marines. Now, if they had Imperial Guard, I'd agree with you, but, you know.
Well, as hero units. Not making them too powerful, but definitely still significant for a player's army. We also wanted to bring back 4 different factions, essentially, each with their own gameplay mechanics.
Now, the hero units, I am hoping they mean like the hero units as in the Force Commander, for example, the Tech Marine, all that stuff like that, or the Lord Commander, Dawn of War 1, things like that, because those were entirely fine. They were powerful, but not game-breakingly so. In Dawn of War 2, they were perhaps a pinch more powerful, but still not game-breakingly so. The hero units I do not want to see brought back, however, are the hero units from Dawn of War 3, where, in theory, I quite like the idea of bringing a customizable, set of heroes, so that you can bring the Death Watch for early game dominance, for example. Or you could bring the Knight, but the problem again was that since pretty much all of the battles were decided late game, more often than not, and the early game units weren't powerful enough to really clench anything, you always ended up with everyone just bringing as many knights as they could, because it was all about having the monstrous slaughtering death machines late game that could take on literally entire armies. So balance is definitely key there.
Somehow have to get this stuff back in the game, but make it like a new version or our version. And then there might be some things, that maybe are not IP conform anymore, or that feel out of place 20 years later. And those are the things we said, okay, let's not keep them because.
At least he's honest. At least he's honest. It's like, okay, we're gonna try and bring back as much as we can, but listen, Games Workshop are a bunch of massive dickheads, and if it's not IP conforming, if it doesn't conform to the values of the company, what they want to sell today, translation, put Primaris in the game, put only Primaris in the game, because they're deeply unpopular, but we really gotta move these models. The company that is making the game at the mercy of the IP holder then kind of just has to bend over and go like, yes, 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 insert the Primaris.
It's more about, having a great game today and not recreating a game that was great 20 years ago.
Right, so Dawn of War 4. That definitely got me a little bit more worried. The trailer still looks good. The large-scale armies look good. The limited snippets of gameplay we've seen look good. My only major objection is the cover system, which seems way too much of a, again, Dawn of War 3 bubble cover style system, which I don't like, and I've yet to see any indication that there's pre-made sandbag covery cover. I'm not worried about that. The addition of the big guys is also somewhat worrying, but bear in mind, you had big guys previously as well, right? Land Raiders from Dawn of War 2, Baneblades from 1, etc., and 2 as well. So it's not like that's a inherent issue in and of itself, it's just, again, the dark memories of Dawn of War 3 looming large on the horizon. And I was very positive towards King Art's game being given an opportunity to do this, as they were clearly trying to make a Company of Heroes game previously with Iron Harvest, but again, stumbling due to inexperience. What I assume to be inexperience anyways. Now, I'm getting a tiny bit worried that at least part of that stumbling may have been due to ideological factors, as again, we do know that certain ideologies, represented by giant flags in the office, do tend to hire politics before talents. This has been demonstrated in countless other game companies already, and I would be happy if King Arts Games is an exception to this rule. But when you then also have somebody who doesn't know that the Necrons have been in Dawn of War before, and this is one of those things where it feels unfair to harp on the Black Ravens, because it might just have been a heavy accent. It might have been one of those moments where you say a word, thinking entirely that you said the other word, which happens, but it demonstrates a certain fake gamer cred, shall we say? Which has me rather worried, as things like Dawn of War, especially if you're trying to recapture the old Dawn of War games, which were heavily focused on the passion of it all and the feel of it all, that is a worrying element. But for now, it still looks good. It just has a fair few more alarm bells ringing right now, and we'll have to wait and see. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching. I do hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.